Hi, I'm Harry, a real estate photographer based in Sydney, Australia, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to swap a sky in Photoshop. Alright, here we are in Photoshop, and the first thing I am going to do is press P on the keyboard. That's going to bring up the pen tool. I'm going to start making a selection around the sky. And we'll just zoom in a bit. I'm just going to come down here, and you'll notice we're cutting into some of the roof and the buildings and that type of thing. And we're just going to be really rough. That doesn't need to be perfect. But once we start hitting areas that don't have much contrast between the sky and say the roof or something like that, we're going to need to be a little bit more careful. So as you can see, this point here, it goes from white to very white, and there's not much contrast. So that is a point where I will want to try and actually do quite a good selection with the pen tool. And there we go. Just quickly something like that, and I keep coming around. You can see we've got pretty good contrast. Again, with this solar panel, it is not much contrast at all, so I'm going to make sure I get a good selection there. And come back down. And once again, not much contrast there, so we can just keep going. We're just going to be quick around here, and I'll try and be sort of precise there. Come up the drain pipe, in we go. Once again, you can see there's no contrast, white on white. Then we just bring it up there. That wasn't very good, so I'll just come back. Cool. Alright, so we've got a selection around our sky. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to hold down Control. You can press Command if you're on an Apple, on the paths. And that is the paths panel. You can find that by going Window, Paths. And you can see now we've got our marching ants, our selection around our sky. What we're going to do next is go up to Select. I'm going to go Color Range. And I'm going to click on the sky, and that makes a selection of that color or luminance. And basically, this fuzziness slider is like our power slider. The higher we go, it's going to look for more pixels close to that luminance or color. And it's also important to note that 40 is its default value. We can click OK. And now we've got a better selection, and it's filtered out some of the areas that we had chopped into before. So we've got our selection. Now I'm going to click on the layer mask button, and it has hidden our building, and that's not what we want. So now I've got the property panel open, so you can find that again by Windows Property, and then you're just going to invert the mask, and there we go. That's got us a pretty good selection. But what I'm going to do to check it is I'm going to create an adjustment layer of a solid color, and I'm going to make it pink. Pink will work good for this scene. We want something that's contrasty to our scene. And now you can see as our background, we'll zoom into 100%. And I'm just going to visually inspect and see how we did. You can see down here there is a bit of the building that was chopped out. Up here we've done pretty well. You can see a little bit there. You can see a little bit in our satellite that some's been taken away. The rest is not too bad. So what we can do is I'm going to press B for brush. And then I'm going to select our layer mask. You'll notice that the focus ring is actually on our layer mask. I'm going to go to our brush and make the hardness 60% and our opacity and flow 100. And now what I'm going to do is start painting in white in the areas that we didn't want to chop away. Just like that. Certainly very minor and small. But that's how you can repair any bits that got chopped out that weren't meant to quite easily. It would be important to note that if some bits, like if we didn't do a very good job chopping around these solar panels because they're square, unnatural shapes, the pen tool would probably be better than using the brush tool for things like that. And then, okay, so that's good. I'm just going to zoom back out to fit to screen. And now what I'm going to do is drop in a sky JPEG. And there we go. This sky is actually not as big as the file that we're working with, so I'm just going to drag it a little bit bigger. We can get away with a little bit. Yep. There we go. And then what I like to do is I like to get the sky and the horizon line, or where the background meets the horizon. I like that to be quite accurate, because usually this area is brighter than up here, so that will work well. I click OK, or click Enter, sorry, and then I press Control left bracket, and I fumbled, and that actually brought it behind the layer. And you can see that has actually done a pretty good job. And the fact that, you know, this sky actually has some clouds, it's just really naturally blended in well with this image. Another thing that's quite often, something else that's quite oftenly used, once the sky is in, I press Control M, and that brings up the curves, and I usually make a selection within the middle, and that helps me adjust the exposure. And generally, if the background was really bright, it's probably better to go bright. If the background was really dark, better to go dark. Just match a similar tone or what looks good, but sometimes you might bring in a sky that looks something like this and it will just look ridiculous. So matching that just to what looks good will make it seem more natural. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as is. I think it works really nice as is. And I would say that's your image pretty much done. But to keep elaborating on this tutorial, I just want to show you what the Color Ranger tool does behind the scenes. So here we've got a gradient, and we can just go select color range. And here we go. Let's make a selection here. You can see how that was, if I'm correct, that was our white side. So if we click on our white side, it's making a selection from just our brighter tones. But if I bring the fuzziness up, you can see how it starts looking for more tones that are darker or probably brighter as well. So let's make a selection in the midtones, and that might even demonstrate that. And it does. So we've got, as we go down, it's more narrow selection of the luminosity tones, or the luminance tones. And then what about if we select the shadows? It's doing the same thing, just not getting as much of a selection. Okay, so I want to go through and demonstrate this with color now, because this filter or tool actually works with color as well. That's why it's called the Color Range tool, I guess. But let's select blue. So we've made a selection of our blue, we set it to 40, and that's our default value. But if we bring it up, you can see it starts eating into other colors as well. So depending on the circumstance, you will need to change your fuzziness. And generally, if you can get away with a lower value, that's probably better. Something else to note too, we can make a selection on our blue, but if I hold down Shift, I can actually select 2 points at once. You can see now it's actually selecting 2 colors at once. So when you're replacing a sky that might have, say, blue sky and white clouds, this might be a point where you want to sample 2 things at once. It can get a bit tricky, but just know that that's an option. And we'll bring back our sky, and there we go. That's our finished result. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, sold is the word you'll be hearing once I photograph your property.